Okay, so we are discussing about the floods. One second. Yeah, it's for your good. Yeah. So we were discussing about the floods, and we have seen a bit about the problems faced by India in terms of flood, and something about what are the causes of floods and so on and so forth. And we have seen some mitigation strategies. Okay, I'll be discussing it again today, and we have also seen a little bit about what is flood zoning and so on. I'm keeping this topic for little later. Okay, this is nothing but case studies pertaining to the habitat protection and what we have for city. Okay, so I'm still looking for some good reading material, and then probably I'll give you reading material along with the presentation. Okay, so today I'll start with this the broad aspects of flood mitigation measures. Okay, and then we'll start with new unit as well for today. Only this topic, that is on case study, I'll discuss it later along with the cyclone case studies. Okay, so I also expect that you will also be reading about the case studies pertaining to since you're reading about a specific topic. I'm expecting that some of you may also be reading about case studies that can be used as a reference for flood mitigations in buildings and cities. Okay, so I hope you will be doing that. And I have been saying that one of the major reference for discussing about floods, okay, is this reference. Okay, it's very recent one. Okay, so which is good. We are able to access the new discussions on flood related issues in India. Okay, so whatever I have been discussing is all from this particular reference paper, and we have seen the floods and its impact across the world and across the Asian countries. If we compare with China and other Asian countries, how are we placed and what is the impact the flood has created over a period of time. And there are certain specific things, there are certain specific case studies that we can look into it so that we learn from the impact that the flood has created. Okay, and then we talked about the flood causes. Okay, general issues that we have to be careful about. Okay, one of the major thing that we have that has come repeatedly is on the excessive rainfall that we receive. Okay, and the carrying capacity of the channels that we have, soil erosions. Okay, and also poor maintenance of natural drainage systems and so on and so forth. Okay, and that is a generic cause that we have come across. And just one second. Yeah, these are broad aspects in which the natural flood is occurred, or the causes of natural flood that we can think of. And apart from that, the flood becomes disaster when we have other compounding effects. For example, the urbanization, the kind of land uses that we have. As a result of it, we last time I told you the kind of flood that we talk about 8 and 10 times is on urban floods. Okay, although we have floods that is caused by other means. For example, let's say soil erosion. I think recently everybody must have seen the the Uttarakhand case, somewhere in the north west. Okay, the sudden burst of the ice cap, or the and as a result of it we have severe flooding. Okay, these are different floods. Okay, and what we are discussing here is about different kind of flood. Okay, this is a the 8 and 8, that's what I am trying to say, 8 and 10 times that we the kind of flood that we face is on urban floods. Okay, so that's a different thing that we should keep in mind when we are talking about urban floods. Yeah, and we have seen, I've told you that there are certain specific case studies that can be looked in, and probably let's see, I can show you this paper today, and you can see what has been said in that. Okay, and we have also seen a little bit about the situation, the flood management initiatives by the Government of India, and what are the specific tasks assigned, and how the things has to be focused. And I have been saying that the focus has so far been on structural measures. Okay, and like we emphasized last time, it is not sufficient to have only structural measures. We should also have non-structural measures. Okay, so non-structural measures, which includes the capacity building, the creating awareness to the public, creating operating manuals for the dams, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those things are also equally important, and that has to be done in the consistently, so that we don't depend only on structural measures. Okay, and this is one example which we discussed, how dam safety protocols to be followed, and if you don't have, what is the issue. And we have also seen how only certain throughout the country, only some around 7% of the dam has these operating manuals in hand, whereas other 90+% of dam does not have this kind of operating manuals as well. This is very recent publication. This is as on 2020. Okay, so we are not talking historical case currently. Okay, so that needs to be addressed in terms of flood management. Also, we have seen there is one initiative, or was one report, Rashtriya Bhar Ayog, okay, which has given certain recommendations for the cities, and also the other habitats or other habitations which falls in line with the flood zones or floodline areas. Those recommendations are also yet to be followed or implemented in cities. Okay, that is another major cause of concern for why concern that India should be worried about, and we should be working towards that. In this as well, there is an emphasis on non-structural measures again, why there is a need for it, and what is the reason why structural measures alone cannot help in making the city resilient. Okay, and also we have seen specifically about India. Okay, what is its geographical context, and because of its varied topography and other characteristics. Okay, we have different terrain across, and then it has to be understood correctly. Also, the entire Indian region can be divided into Brahmaputra river region, Northwest river region, Ganges river region, and central central India and Deccan. Okay, this we have seen in the last to last class. Till here we saw, okay, how the picture is throughout the country. Okay, so and in last class we went about describing the major issues caused here in the 4 regions, and specifically in the central part of India. Okay, and we have seen there are these are different specific regions, and each region has got specific problem. Okay, so which also indicates that there is no one solution that can be applied for all the cases. Okay, so that's also one of the things that we should understand from this from this discussion is the kind of flood that occurs in the Brahmaputra river region, and the I think we have seen it is more or less on soil erosion. Okay, so the kind of mitigation that is required is different there than the kind of mitigation that we require in the southern region or central or Deccan region. Okay, so where we don't have what is it, soil erosion as one of the problem, we do have, but not the primary one. Okay, so the kind of terrain is also different here. We have seen it's more or less flat land that we have, and the flooding that occurs in Deccan region is very different from what we see in the other regions as well. Yeah, and also yeah, this is specific to Ganges. Okay, what can be done in that region, and we started discussing about the central part of India, and I also told you that the flooding in the central and the Deccan region is also influenced by the cyclones that we get. Okay, and tropical cyclone is one of the major disaster that hits the southern part of the country. Okay, that aggravates the flooding issues in the region. Okay, all this river carry heavy flood. We have discussed about this. The kind of terrain that we have here is all flat. Okay, whereas as a result, if we get heavy rainfall somewhere in the northern part of the Western Ghat or on the central India, okay, the excess water that reaches out to the cities here and the coastlines are heavy. Okay, and it has a compounding impact on the carrying capacity of the channels. Okay, and we have seen soil erosion as one of the reasons in Mahanadi river. That's what I was explaining. And in the central region, we said the damage is caused not only by the flood, it is associated with the cyclones. Okay, so I think we have discussed till here, and I will quickly discuss about some of the things in terms of the flood management that we have. Okay, there are certain specific things that has been mentioned. For example, we have seen about the flood mapping. Okay, why there is a need for flood mapping, and what can be done, what kind of information that is there in the flood mapping, so that in case of disaster, these maps are useful for taking the people to safe zones and so on and so forth. Yeah, and maybe from here I would like to discuss a little bit in detail. Okay, so when we talk about flood management, we said that the kind of mitigations or the kind of steps taken is not unilateral or unidirectional, it is multi-targeted. We need to look at the flood from multi-dimensional aspects. Okay, so as discussed, okay, flood management strategies can be aligned with flood risk, water resource management, development, and environmental protection. Okay, so instead of looking at excess water reaching to the shore or passing through the city and reaching the shore, and we create structural measures for that. Instead of that, how do we manage the entire water system as such, okay, from a holistic perspective? Okay, so that's what the target is now, and I think I told you last time, the integration of rivers across the country. Okay, that's one of the thing that has been discussed. And in fact, here in Andhra Pradesh, one of the streams, streams of Godavari is brought to the city. Okay, so those who are in Vijayawada, and probably you all must be aware that though we don't have the stream or the tributaries of Godavari reaching naturally to the city of Vijayawada, however, through channels the water is brought from the Godavari river, and it passes through the same channel of Krishna. Okay, so this is probably for they have done it for agriculture perspective. Okay, otherwise India has a plan for integrating this water resources across the country. And I told you last time, I happened to read one of the guidelines that is in development. Okay, probably it will be in it will come as a guideline very soon, that is on managing the river fronts of cities. Okay, so Government of India is coming out with specific guidelines for managing the river ecosystem and the immediate land uses in and around the rivers and water body, in fact. Yeah, so they have come out with various strategies for maintaining the rivers in the city. Okay, so that is also in pipeline. Okay, and I've said the strategies needs to be multidimensional in nature. Okay, so that all aspects of floods can be addressed. Okay, and in flood management, one of the first thing that we should do is accepting the residual risk. Last time as well I told you, it is not possible, and also not only last time, I have been saying this from the beginning, we cannot prevent entirely all the disasters that we foresee. Okay, however, we can minimize the damage. Okay, and also, like I have been saying, one of the major objective or the aim of all those things that we are discussing now through the subject is to save the life. Okay, so even there is a economic loss that is okay, that is bearable, but what is not acceptable is the loss of life. Okay, so even in flood management, what we should understand, or not only in flood management, in all the disaster, even after taking probably the best possible solution, we may encounter issues that we have to accept it, because we can't predict as accurate the nature accurately. Okay, so it is not as simple as we think. Okay, the flood control measures are designed for events of normal incidence, but there can always be a catastrophic flood, as there is no certainty about severity of floods in the future events. Okay, so this is one thing that we should. This is applied not only for flood but for other disaster as well. The same sentence is applicable for earthquake as well, because we don't know. What we plan is based on past experience. What is coming in the future, we don't know. Okay, so that's one thing that we should accept and we should work towards it. That is why it is necessary to accept that only certain degree of protections can be provided through from all these passive measures. Okay. Moreover, to guarantee continuously high level of protection by flood control structures, huge investment is necessary for attempting both maintenance and expertise. Knowledge is needed in this. Some amount of residual risk can be accepted by structural measures to manage economic loss. This risk can be reduced by binding non-structural measures along with the structural measures, as they will enable higher degree of flood preparedness and prevention of exposure to flood water. Okay, so this we did discuss. Okay, so what can be done in that case? Okay, apart from structural measures, we need to invest on non-structural measures so that the people are prepared for disaster and psychologically, and also they know how to react and so on and so forth. Yeah, so this is one thing. For example, the steps is crucial for Brahmaputra river region, which is most severe flood affected regions, and a huge investment in structural measures. This is one of the example where a lot of investment has already gone in this region on structural measures. Okay, so there is no point in further improving or further strengthening the structural measures, whereas leaving out non-structural interventions. Okay, so maybe in the now, if as per the author's interpretation, the focus should be on non-structural measures, so that both structural and non-structural measures are given both equal importance. Yeah, a secure connection between structural and non-structural measure will ensure considerable risk reduction for present scenario, and also assure flood-proof strategy for future events. That's one thing. Accepting the residual risk. The second thing is implementation of multiple strategies or multiple measures. Okay, so the kind of the intervention that we are supposed to take should be multidimensional in nature. Okay, the consideration of a wide range of management measures to reduce flood probability and exposure is necessary for building a robust system. Okay, so the work and activities that are implemented should be strictly based on proper scientific evaluation of the area. For instance, dam operation and flood indentation mapping and so on. Also, most of the activities carried out by the state until now focused on flood fighting and control rather than overall flood risk management. Okay, and I think there's one more point, and along with that we'll discuss this. In the same implementing multiple strategies, a scientific based approach for preliminary and feasibility study considering the strength and weaknesses of the proposed plan is necessary for successful implementation. One, in urban areas, along with the improvement in the drainage system, a real-time flood forecasting system is required. A strict implementation of building codes and demarcation of flood zones in flood affected region, as suggested by numerous committees, should be thought of. Okay, so there are three things that is suggested while discussing implementation of multiple strategies, and I have emphasized this from what we can do. Okay, so so far whatever we are discussing, it looks beyond the intervention of an architect, right? So it looks very broad, very policy driven, national level intervention or state level intervention, things are there. But being architect, what we can do, Okay, that is yet to come. I'll show some of the things where we can intervene. Okay, otherwise this is not a micro problem, micro level problem. It is a broad regional level problem. Okay, so the problem has to be understood at the regional level, so that we come out with a specific solutions. Okay, even micro level solutions are there. Okay, but that will work only if we address the issue at the city and the region level. Okay, so of this first step is being scientific in evaluating the cities, in evaluating how city behaves, works, functions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when we prepare some development plan, let's say some new town or new expansion of a city, the assessment has to be done in a scientific manner. And also for present case as well, we should use more scientific approach to understand the functioning of cities. Okay, in urban areas, we need to have this is in line with, this is generic. Okay, this can apply for regional level and also for city level interventions as well. And particularly when it comes to urban and city areas, okay, real time flood forecasting systems can be integrated. The stakeholders or for example, the city managers should have this kind of tool, flood forecasting tool, real time, so that the information is passed on in real time. Okay, do we have sophisticated tools? For example, let us say we do have sophisticated tools like there's one tool, very powerful tool called I'm forgetting the name now. I think last time also I used this tool, Mike. There is a tool called Mike, MIKE. There is a software for forecasting the floods. Okay, so it can be we can have the systems in place so that real time flood measurements can be taken. Okay, how do we do it? Maybe I'll give you one example. We did one case study in Chennai. How do we do this real time forecasting of floods? Okay, so if you go to the method in which this can be built, actually there are sensors placed across the channels of the river or the channel through which the water flows. Let's say flood water flows. Okay, so these are like we have sensors, lighting sensors. Okay, so these are sensors that that gets activated, let's say if the water level rises. Okay, so suppose if you see sections, probably we may have the sensors at different levels indicating, okay, the water level in the channel or the stream at so and so time is this. Okay, so far this can be done manually as well. Okay, if you go to some dam or even any in some river banks, you will have a scale, okay, that shows that, okay, water is at 3 meter level, water is at 6 meter level, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now with new tools that we have in hand, okay, so these are all can be real-time information can be obtained. Okay, so this is one thing that can be discussed, that needs to be implemented. The other thing is where we can directly take part is implementation of this building codes. Okay, implementation of the building codes and recommendations of the national building codes in the form of the building bylaws or the land uses and so on and so forth. Okay, so only an architect can implement this, right? So being a designer, being an architect, so we get a chance to develop the site plan. We get a chance to develop the urban areas and so on and so forth. So that time consciously, okay, we should make sure that we are following the recommended guidelines by the national authority. Okay, so if we lay out this part, okay, we will not be able to implement it later on. Okay, this is one thing that we can actually directly take part in it. Okay, other things, improvement in the governance. Okay, so one of the flood management measures that is discussed is the management of overall system. Okay, I think we'll not be going into deep, but I think we should understand that there are multiple stakeholders involved in decision making. Okay, so I have given you an example what happened in Chennai's case. Okay, so all the decision making was with one person or one stakeholder. Okay, so it is said, it is again it is a theory. We don't know for sure whether this was the case, because it is still a theory, because we have not got the full picture of it. It is said that the decision to open the dams, okay, the check dams that we had, it took time. Okay, they were waiting for the decisions from the top to release the excess water from specific localities. Okay, and this delay is one of the reason for the flood that has occurred in Chennai. Okay, that is one thing that we should keep in mind. Okay, so governance is also a very, very crucial thing. When the stakeholder will come into picture, who will take the decision and how they will take decisions. Okay, so that's another important thing. Stakeholders participation in local context. Okay, the current flood management system is semi-transparent and lack coordination among the local communities. Okay, communities need to learn how to live with the flood instead of how to fight them. Okay, enhancing awareness, empowerment, training of communities for effective flood preparedness. Okay, so apart from making the governance simple and making it more effective, we should also take the people into consideration. Okay, at the end of the day, it is not the decision makers at the ground level who have to perform. Okay, it is the community that has to perform on some instructions. So if we are not aware of what is the possible steps that I have to take, so it is difficult for me to react or accept that at that particular time. Okay, so that's why this preparation is required. The community has to be made aware. These kind of programs has to be conducted at a local level. Implementation of soft measures of flood risk management, example land use policy to be identified as social responsibility. This would be particularly advantage in communities residing in this region. Okay, and also for example, directly if we look the role of architects and urban designers in the context of flood management, this sentence is important. A considerable dividend can be obtained within the urban region as well as where the rate of urbanization is adding to the flood susceptibility. In such regions, a newly identified concept like sponge city, green roof, rainwater harvesting, segregation of rainwater from sewer system, regular cleaning of sewer system, water filtration, attenuation systems can be initiated. So these concepts are now being discussed. Okay, sponge city, I've explained it last time as well. what is the blue and green spaces that we have in city, okay, whether these green and blue will help in mitigating the flood management, okay. So there is a new word called acupuncture as well, in urban acupuncture, okay. So that the same idea of acupuncture is brought into urban context, and they say that injection of green in cities, injection of blue in cities, means water, okay, injection of the greeneries and water bodies in city, how it has to be done so that the city can withhold or absorb, okay. That's why the word sponge is used, absorb some of the shocks, okay. Green roofs, this can be done at a unit level, okay, with because we cannot do the entire greenery for the entire city as such. And also I was explaining last time, we should have a large chunk of green space in the city. At the same time, we should have fragmented smaller green components and water components across the city, okay, so that the burden is reduced on this particular greenery or water body in one phase, okay. So we need to have integration of greeneries and water body in some context, and we should also have dispersion of greeneries and blues and across the city, okay. Green roof will also is one concept where dispersion of idea can be implemented, okay, where we as an architect can directly take part in this small initiatives, okay. Let's say you are at end and you are designing only one house, okay, where let's say 1 square meter of greenery you are creating, okay. So that's too small when we look at that at a individual plot perspective. But if the same is applied on 1,000 and 10,000s and lakhs of buildings, that's a big number, okay. But although the intervention is small, 1 square meter of land here, however, if you see collectively, this is a big contribution, okay. So that is one thing that we can think of as architects. Rainwater harvesting, okay, this is another subject we do discuss. When we discuss about site plan, we say that what is the percentage of runoff that you get and how your surfaces are treated, okay, whether you are giving adequate permeable surfaces so that water can percolate down to the earth, yeah. So that is another thing that we do. We will be this is applicable even for smallest possible plot to large city planning as well, okay. So that is another thing that where we can directly intervene. And other things like segregation of rainwater from grey water and black water, right. So here again, I think in the services you must have read how water efficiency can be brought in buildings, and why there should not be a mixing of the rainwater with the sewer water, okay, and how it can be done. 2-pipe system, you must have read about it in your services class. Yeah, so and other things like specific landscape initiatives can be taken as well. Yeah, so here the point that we can take is the sponge city, green roof concepts and rainwater harvesting techniques that we can think of at site and the building level. And the last thing is uncertainty in risk and effect and its effective communication. Okay, the current forecasting system is limited to channel water level forecast, which does not convey the actual risk and cumbersome to be understood by the general public. Okay, and awareness of compounding risk to the general public to enhance the effectiveness of the warning system. Development of easily understandable flood risk map for frequently inundated areas to provide insight to the people about hazard that may face. So the another step that is discussed apart from all these things that we have discussed, first is understanding the risk, then implementing different strategies, governance and stakeholder and the local people, then communicating the information. Okay, so I was saying let's just say we have very sophisticated flood monitoring system in the channels and riverbeds, where we can do real-time forecasting of flood water levels. We may have that sophisticated information and tools to assess the hazard. However, this has to finally reach to the public. Okay, so they are the one who have to act, okay, and then respond to the call that is emerging from, let's say, this this unit, yeah, emergency unit or whatever. So this information that we communicate to the public should be simple, and should be people should take it seriously and then implement it. Okay, so for example, let's say even in COVID case, initially there were what is it, protocols, there were guidelines set by the Government of India. Okay, initially in initial days, if you see, the people of India, the people in general, did not understand the scale of the problem, the intensity of the problem. Okay, and we were slightly casual in our approach. Okay, only in later stages we understood that this is a severe case. Okay, and we have to adapt very strict protocols so that we are safe. Okay, and now the same trend is happening again. If you see the current trend, there is a raise in number of cases. If you see last 2-3 days, the number of cases has gone up to another 26,000, 27,000. Okay, the curve is again coming up. Okay, and if you see the Government of India's briefing, they say that again the public is not taking the advices seriously. Okay, and that's one of the major reason why there is an increase in number of cases. Similar thing can happen in other cases as well. Whatever advance that we have on other side, okay, unless until the general public is made aware of it, unless and until the public is made aware and trained, the whatever step that we take may not be effective. Okay, so this is one point that we should understand. How do we communicate, and what is the authenticity of the communication? How people will take the communication. There is another thing that you should keep in mind. And also probably if you when you were here in Vijayawada, probably you must have received certain messages suddenly that in your mobile that stay inside, and probably there will be a lightning strike in another 45 minutes time. Okay, so who sends these kind of messages? Actually, in cities in India, particularly for example in the coastal regions, the government has invested so much in creating this alert system, early warning systems. Okay, we will see it maybe when we discuss about the cyclone and other things. How do we communicate? We have early warning systems. Okay, the message that we receive is auto generated. Okay, like I said, based on the sensors, based on the communication, the information is passed on to nearest signals, nearest network tower, and then the information is automatically passed to all the mobile networks, all the mobiles that take the signal from that particular tower. Okay, so these are early warning systems that we have in place. Okay, so how do we take that? Okay, that's the thing that we are discussing, whether the message that we receive, how seriously we take it, and how we implement it. Okay, so that is another thing that we should keep in mind. How do we communicate the issues? Yeah, and I think that's all. These are the 5 major things that is discussed when we talk about flood management. Okay, so I'm keeping this for some more. I'll discuss this flood mitigation measures, the case studies, along with cyclone. Okay, so I will not be discussing it now. With this, I will stop here on this flood management. Okay, only one topic is pending on this unit, that is on the last part, the mitigation measures at building level. Okay, so along with the case studies, I will discuss it in the next unit. Okay, so I'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask.